Hey ladies, I hope everybody's having a good week. I wanted to jump on here and do a quick video on makeup brushes. So quality versus not so great quality, synthetic versus natural, how to care for your brushes, what to buy, etc., etc. So if that interests you in any way, please keep watching. You guys know that I'm doing a big giveaway this month for a 14-piece makeup brush set for my VIP group. So I want you guys to know what the brushes are and what they do. And yeah, so stay tuned. That's what we're talking about today. I'm going to start with talking about synthetic versus natural hair brushes. Synthetic brushes are made from animal hair. They don't kill the animal, they just shave it. And they're typically a lot softer, so you get a nice blend out. The synthetic brushes have stepped up their game in recent years, so you could get some really great quality synthetic brushes as well. Pros and cons. Okay, so the cons to a synthetic brush is that obviously, since it's made from probably a plastic byproduct or something like that, it may not be as soft over time. They may not wear as well. Like, natural hair brushes tend to last a little bit longer just because of the nature of the beast. It's just like natural hair extensions versus synthetic extensions. They're just, after wash and wash and wash and wash, they just don't always go all the way back to normal. That being said, there are some high quality synthetic brushes, which we'll talk about later. Another cons of a natural hair brush though is that natural hair is by nature porous. Just like your hair absorbs hair dye, it absorbs oils and creams and all that stuff, so does your makeup brush. So natural hair brushes tend to, if you're using them with a creamier product, will kind of, how when your hair gets wet and it clumps up together, that will happen with a natural hair brush when exposed to a lot of wetness or a creamy product. I will put in this disclaimer so I don't trip over it later that I do use natural hair brushes with our eyeshadows because you can. They dry fast enough. They're not a super dense cream. They're really light and fluffy, so it doesn't bog down my brush and make it nasty. So let me just put that out there right now. Okay, so let's get started. I'm going to start by talking about foundation brushes. There are a ton of different foundation brushes on the market at your disposal that you can, where's that one? Ah, down here. Really? Okay, so that being said, there are a ton. All right, so first things first, natural hair brushes. This is a natural hair brush. Do you see how it's all clumpy right here? This is from foundation. So this is a super soft brush. It blends out beautifully. I love to use it, but I don't like this byproduct of it, that it gets nasty and I have to clean it super often. So that is something to think about when considering natural versus synthetic. I actually prefer synthetic brushes for foundation just for this purpose. All right, so these three are very, very similar, and then these two are very, very similar. So we're gonna discuss them. Okay, so some foundation brushes look like this. This is domed, or you will see a flat one, either one. Flat one, this is a flat one. These you put the product on your face, put your dots of foundation on, you'll buff it in a circular motion, and it gives you like an airbrushed finish. It's really light. It's gonna give you more of a natural finish. So if you want a super duper full coverage, you'll need to pat where you want more coverage. Otherwise, you're gonna get a really, really even, fast blend out. That's what I love these two brushes for. These are primarily exactly the same. This one is just a little unique brush. I don't think it was always curved like this. I think it just kind of ended up that way because it's getting older. But they're essentially the same. These are both synthetic brushes. This is a natural hair brush. This gives the same payoff. It's just very, very soft. So the softer the brush, the lighter the application, the more natural it's gonna be and the better it blends out. So when people are gearing toward purchasing a natural hair brush, it's because they want something that's soft and light that's gonna really like blend out that product fast. These I feel do the same thing, personally. They're very similar. So potato, take your pick. This is just more ergonomic with the shape of it. For your face, these ones are gonna go straight on, but I love them all three. They're interchangeable, I feel like, to me. Your next foundation option is gonna be the good old regular foundation brush. These are both exactly the same. Oops. They're two different brands, obviously. This one's a lot smaller than this one. Personally, for foundation, I prefer this guy because it's bigger, so I'm getting more of a blend out faster, versus this little one, it's gonna take me longer. And this is also very dense, where this one has a lot of flexibility to it. For foundation specifically, I like the flexibility, especially when I'm using something like a paintbrush, for the same reason that I would like flexibility if I was using an actual paintbrush to paint a picture, right? You're gonna get a thorough, it's not gonna be gappy, it's soft, it's easy to use. So you'll paint your foundation on. Where you want extra coverage, you'll pat. The main difference between these two, aside from the size, is good quality versus poor quality. This is the biggest difference. Let me show you. Okay, do you see how this is tapered? Really tapered here? It's got a lot of flexibility to it, and it's really tapered. So that is gonna blend everything out a lot more smoothly, because it's the same as, I don't know, like your hair. When they blend your hair together, it sets correctly, right? And it keeps its shape when you fix it. If they don't, if it's a blunt cut, it just kind of does what it wants to do. So this is more blunt. Do you see how it's not very tapered? And it's also a little bit thicker. For a foundation brush, I like something that's really kind of thin and moves with my face. This one is thicker, and see how it doesn't bend? See how the bristles spread when I bend it? See how this one kind of, most of it kind of fans out? Okay, so what that means is that when I'm putting on my foundation, I can't, since this doesn't bend with my skin, it's just, I'm only getting the tip. The tip of it is all that's applying my foundation. So it's gonna take me a lot longer to blend it out. It's probably gonna look streaky. I'm probably gonna have to go in with my hand and pat it out. Because it's not feathered and it's not tapered or anything like that. So that's something to think about when you're purchasing a foundation brush. Look at it, touch it, feel it. This is an e.l.f. brush. It's a dirt cheap brush. I still use it for concealer. I'll use it for foundation in a pinch. It's not the end of the world. It's just, if given the opportunity to have options, choose a better quality option. This one is gonna be a better quality. So that's something to think about. On to other parts of the face. Okay, so I just washed some of these brushes, so they're gonna be a little bit damp, so you have to bear with me. Okay, so let's talk blush. I don't actually have a fluffy blush brush here in front of me. I'm sure I have one somewhere, but I tend to gravitate toward the angled blush brushes, and the reason for that is that I like to contour my skin. So when I contour my face, I can use this pointy side and go right here in the creases, and it also gives me a little bit of precision if I wanted to contour my nose, just anywhere that I would want to contour. So I have a little bit of precision there. Then I can use the fluffy side to apply my blush. Again, our products, Synergen's products, they dry quickly. They don't moisten up or make my brushes really nasty. So using a natural hairbrush really doesn't affect it one way or the other. So this is what I prefer for a blush brush personally. Another contour option is this one, and I just washed it, so it's like super wet. But see how this is a domed brush? This one's fat and it's round and it's domed, kind of like a Gigantor eyeshadow brush. This is great, again, for the contour. I used this in my last video, if you guys watched it, but it gives you a lot of precision to get there in the crease. And if I wanted to go up here, but this is a lot denser. See how dense this is? My finger's bouncing off of it. So it's gonna give me a lot of color very quickly. The good thing about that is that if you're applying, especially creamy products like what we offer, your bigger brushes, you lose a lot of the product inside there. So with a denser brush, you're gonna get all color deposit and then blend it out. So you'll use a lot less product because it's not getting lost in your brush, you're getting slurped up in there. So you're not wasting anything. So that's definitely something to consider when you're looking at brushes for yourself. Another blush brush option is this here. This is a duo fiber brush. So you've got typically this natural hair down here, and then these are synthetic on the outside. What that does is the natural hair is going to absorb because it's porous. It's going to pick up the product, and these synthetic hairs on the top are going to move it around on your skin. But they're cut to 2 different lengths. So if you notice, this is kind of wispy and this is really dense. So this is going to help me if I'm using a cream to powder product like a creamy foundation or a bronzer that's really, really deep, and I don't want, you know, if I'm heavy-handed and I don't want to get too much product on my brush, something like this is great because it will grab the product and you're able to airbrush it into your skin, just buff it in really lightly, but it's holding the bulk of the product back so you're not getting 100% color deposit. If you're a heavy-handed person, look at these for bronzers or anything like that. They have a big old fat one that I've used for foundation. It's excellent for a powder foundation even because if you use like a really dense brush like this for a powder foundation, you'll end up with a really thick coverage. And if you want something a little bit more natural, this just gives you a little bit more versatility. So you can really pack on where you want the coverage, but it won't be thick everywhere. This is dense and it's going to be thick everywhere. Now when using a liquid, it's different because, you know, you're buffing it in to your skin. So that's a little bit of a different concept. I hope I'm answering these questions correctly because it's a lot of information. Okay, so that covered kind of blushes all around your face. Powder, okay, everybody has a powder brush. This is just a cheap one. I don't have a preference as far as powder brushes are concerned because this would be specifically for a loose powder or just a light dusting of a finishing powder. You just want something that's going to cover your face. I personally don't use them anymore because our powders come with a little brush on it. Yes, this isn't the greatest brush on the planet that comes with our powder, but the same as the little sponge that comes with your just your regular powder. It's not really, it works with the brush. The brush makes it super convenient. I love the packaging because I can never find anything, and I like that it comes with me and it's kind of easy to work with. It's not like cakey and where I'm like patting on giant cakes of powder, but it's, you know, it's not a super great quality brush. So if you want to step up your game, you can take your Synergens powder, dump it in a different container, and you can use your personal powder brush if that's what you prefer. I personally just don't care enough to do that. But the more dense your brush, like the tighter it is, the more color payoff you'll get. So if I wanted a full coverage powder, like if I wanted to use my powder as a foundation, I would use a dense brush like this. See how dense this is? If I wanted a light dusting of powder, I would use a fluffy brush like this because the tighter the brush, the more the color payoff. Just like with our brushes, you can actually twist this up so where it just leaves a little bit of the hair sticking out. So I could actually go in and use this directly as a contour if I wanted to, versus twisting it all the way down and using it as a fluffy brush. Kind of halfway up, I could use, this is the bronzer powder, I could use this as a blush because it's gonna give me more color payoff because of the density. Does that make sense? Okay, moving on. All right, eyeshadow brushes. There are a bajillion and 10 different eyeshadow brushes on the market. Oh, I meant to talk about these kind of domed brushes. Same concept. See how fat and fluffy this is though? It's a lot bigger. So same with the contour. Anything that's angular, that's what it's designed for. This is for a super sharp contour. This one is for a very, very soft one. So it just depends on you. Like I'm very light-handed. I could sit there and pick up product and pick up product and pick up product until I build it up to the way that I want it. But if you're heavy-handed and you know you like barely touch your brush into eyeshadow and you dig out half of it, then you need, you know, something that's gonna work to your advantage for, you know, your habits. So you'll want something fluffier, something lighter, something easier to use. Something denser is gonna be good for somebody like me who doesn't use a lot of product and wants to get more color payoff faster. So the denser the brush, the more color payoff you get, the faster, you know, the faster your color payoff is. All right, so shadow brushes. Okay, so first I'm gonna talk about the flat ones. Okay, we're gonna talk eyes. All right, so the colors that you place on your eyelid, you're gonna use a flat brush for that. You can use a concealer brush. This one's dirty, I know, don't judge me. Or something like this. This is a natural hair brush by Dior, and it's tapered, but it's flat. So by flat, it's dense. Both of them are dense. You're gonna pat the color on your lid with this. The reason you don't wanna use a fluffy brush is that because remember I said the denser the brush, the more color payoff you get. The idea with your eyelid is that you wanna press that color in. You don't really need to blend it out too much, right? Because you're not trying to, you don't want a wash of color. You want an impactful color. So if I used something like this and just dusted it on there, I would just have a light, really light dusting of color. So it just depends on the look that you're going for. Typically, you'll want your color on the lid to be more bold. That's why I always gravitate toward a flat brush to press it on. Do I have a preference? No, not at all. I will grab whatever flat brush I can find. It doesn't matter if it's cheap or high quality. In this incident, I really don't think it matters. You don't want to use a concealer brush like this on a powder product. That's when it really matters if you're using natural hair versus synthetic, because the natural hair, again, because it's more porous and typically because it's tapered really finely, it's going to grab that product and hold it on there while you tap it onto your lid. Whereas synthetic one, it's typically, especially a concealer, this one's too dirty to tell, but here's another one. Especially a concealer brush, it's tapered, but it's tapered toward the very, very top. So if you look at a natural hair brush, it's tapered like a little bit further down, kind of starts toward the center. So it's designed to grab the product, grab that powder to pat it onto your lid. Okay, so if you tried to use like a concealer brush, like a synthetic one for that, it's not gonna pick up as much eyeshadow if you're using a powdered shadow. Now, if you're using the cream shadows, like the Synergence Shadow Sense, it doesn't matter. You can use either one and it works the same. Okay, sorry y'all. This is gonna be kind of a long one. You can fast forward and rewind or whatever. Okay, so on to eyeshadow brushes. All right, so there's 1,000,010, and I just have so many, I'm not even. Okay, so I'm gonna start with, okay, we talked about the flat for your eyelid. Now let's talk crease. Okay, so crease brushes. I prefer domed brushes for my crease. Let me talk to you about the reason for that. It's the shape. It's naturally geared toward, your crease goes in and it's round. So going like a windshield wiper motion is easier to blend in your crease. If you tried to use something like this big old fat fluffy one, you don't get a lot of control, because my crease, I want to blend it outward too, outward and upward. So if I use something like this is oval shaped, it doesn't give me as much precision because I can't spin the brush. I can't really do anything to help blend out my eyeshadow faster. That's where these babies come in. Now, if you notice, they come in all different shapes and sizes, and from greatest to least price point, honestly, these are all over the map. But I've got natural hair. This is boar hair from MAC. This is a little bit more dense, like I was talking about before. This one is sable, so it's softer and it's tapered in. I've got different sizes for different jobs. So if I want, now, and this is a little bit extreme. This is just because I did makeup for 100 years. So for a normal size one, you'll want like a MAC 224 brush, or the Sigma E40, or something thereof about this size. It's tapered. It's perfect for blending out that middle color, that prime color that's 2 shades darker than your natural skin tone, to help blend everything else on top of it. And I like to have something tighter, like a little baby one like this, for when I want to smoke out the outer crease. If I want to bring in a deeper shade in the far corners, something smaller and more precise. This, just like the contour brush, I need to be able to get in there, and I can't really do that with a brush this large for my eye size. I'm dropping all kinds of brushes everywhere. But if you notice, this is a lot denser than like something like this too. So I'm getting a lot more color, a lot more pigment deposit faster with a smaller brush. Say you don't have a small brush like this, a good runner-up is one of these little pencil brushes. Looks like that. Can you see it? It's very small, it's dense. This works well for smudging out eyeliner underneath, or even just planting that color there if you want to deepen up your crease, and then going in with your bigger brush and blending it in toward the nose. So that's what these are designed for. This is not an eyeliner brush. I mean, it could be, but dear Lord, you would have, whoosh, it could be intense. Other kind of shadow brushes, there are some out there that are like this. This is tapered, but it's kind of angled as well. This is designed to be a multifunctional brush so that you could get in the crease. You'll hold it like this, so you could really get in there. If you were cutting the crease, you could get a really close cut crease with something like this, but it still has enough body to it to help blend everything out. So that's why these types of things exist. It's just so that you can find your own niche. For highlight, the brow bone highlight, I personally prefer a boar hair brush. It's tighter, so I'm getting a lot of color deposit. So I place it where you first place your brush is where you're going to get the most deposit. So I start up here to place my color, and then I blend it out so that I'm getting like that raised eyebrow, like lifted face look. But I also use this one for that. Like if I want just a wash because it's fluffy, if I want just a little bit of color, then I like something like this for that. If it's a super duper shimmery color, I'll use something fluffier because I want to disperse the shimmer and not have it so intense. Because if I were to use like a flat brush, just like I would on my eyelid, I would get super highlight, and it would, it may or may not be too much for me. I prefer to add color. It's easier to add than it is to take away. I don't want to go in with too much too soon because it's hard to blend off. So those are my preferences for that. I'm gonna have to skim this video down. Okay, so liners, eyeliners. There's lots of options for liner brushes. You've got your standard flat ones that are pointy, kind of get the gist there. Got super duper fine tipped ones like this. And then I've got this angled one. I prefer the angled ones in general, just because for me, it's a little bit more ergonomic. So I'm holding it like a pencil. It works with my hand. It's easier. I'm left-handed, so everything's a nightmare. But see how fine this tip is and how it's kind of got some give to it. I like that for a winged line because you can kind of drag it down to get your desired look. If it's too tight or too stiff, for me, I feel like it's harder. You end up kind of rubbing some product off while you're trying to apply it. Defeats the purpose. You've got little guys like these, and then your angled brush. For me, I don't like to use an angled brush for eyeliner if I'm doing a wing, because you've got to go out and then actually turn the brush and go back in. I mean, I'll use it in a pinch. It's not impossible. It's just not my preference because it's not as flat. Because you don't have a lot of extra hairs flying around those, right? This one it could fray or something like that, and then you're putting an extra line on the top or whatever. These I prefer, of course, for my eyebrows. I do think that when you're looking for an eyebrow brush, make sure that it's pretty flat here, like it's not thick at all. You don't want something that's gonna fray out because you don't want, you want it to be controlled. That's the entire point. You could also use this to blend out underneath. That's the same as these little flat guys. This is obviously more dense. You see there's very little hairs sticking up. So, and then this one is a little bit more flimsy. So dense is gonna give me a straight flat line. There's not a lot of smudgeability going on. With this little fluffier one, I can really like smudge out my under eye eyeliner or something like that or smudge my liner if I wanted to get like a smoky look. So I've got a little bit more versatility with something like this where it's got more space here versus something like this. Now, I do have to say you can't use something like this to apply your shadow color. I mean, you technically could, but it would just take you longer because it's so small. So, you know, work smarter, not harder. So that is that. I think I covered most of my bases. If I forgot something, please message me down below and let me know, and I will try to answer any questions that you have. Last but not least, I'm going to tell you how to take care of your brushes. Do not use vinegar on your brushes, especially if they're natural hair. Why? Even though vinegar is cleansing and it cleans things, it's also stripping. If you're using a natural hair brush, you have to treat it like your actual hair. So it needs to be clean, it needs to be conditioned, it needs to be taken care of, just like your hair, because it will break off and it will disappoint you, just like your regular hair. So don't use vinegar, use a mild shampoo. Baby shampoo is a good one, something designed for brush cleaning. They do have the ones where you can spray it and wipe it off. Those have a lot of alcohol in them, so you want to use, that's more designed for going from one face to the other. Those are made for makeup artists because the alcohol evaporates quickly. The brush doesn't get saturated, so you can move on to the next customer very fast and still have a sanitary clean brush with no product on it. That is not designed for you to maintain your brushes at home. The way that you're supposed to maintain your brushes at home is by actually shampooing them with mild shampoo, or we have a brush cleanser by Senegence as well. When you wash them, don't use a volumizing shampoo or anything funky. Use just something basic, because if it's volumizing and you have natural hair, you might make it big. If it's stripping, even if it's a synthetic brush, you'll strip it. These hairs need to maintain their natural oils, maintain the natural integrity of the brush. That being said, this is the ferrule of your brush. This is where the brush hairs are glued in or hand tied in, or however, depending on the quality of the brushes that you've purchased, have been designed. So there's probably glue here. So if you get a lot of water up underneath here, eventually your brush tip is gonna pop off. So when you wash them, wash this part under the water. And if you watch my cheap things that are awesome, I use like a little brush mat that you can get on Amazon for like 10 bucks, and it helps me scrub them out fast. So just get the water here, then you wanna rinse it off, reshape the brush back to its dome head position in this case, and lay them flat to dry. Don't set them up like this to dry, because A, they're gonna lose their shape up here, and B, you're gonna get water down here, which we want to avoid, okay? So those are, good quality versus bad quality, how to tell. Okay, so there are a lot of great quality, even synthetic brushes on the market. Ways you can tell is just like what I showed you earlier with the foundation brushes. The way that the brush is tapered, the way that it's shaped, the way that it feels. You can tell, read reviews, find out, you know, what kind of products you're using. Because if you're using, you know, lower end eyeshadows that don't maybe have a whole lot of pigmentation to them or a lot of color payoff, then you need to make sure you're getting a really good quality brush that's gonna be able to dig that color out. If you used, you know, something, I don't know, too soft, or if you use a really hard concrete brush on something like Too Faced, which has very finely milled eyeshadows, you're gonna scrape it out. You're gonna use a lot more product than you want, and you're gonna end up with powder dust everywhere. So you want to touch them. Like when looking for foundation brushes, I like to look for this, see how this doesn't bend. Like I just said before, and this one's got some move to it. Well, obviously my face has a lot of curves and angles, so I want something that's gonna have some move to it. This is too stiff. You know, save your buck, don't buy this. But in a pinch, it's if you've only got $1 to spend, man, that's what you've got. So, you know, get what you can. But I would just read reviews. If you're looking for you know, realistically, it just depends how often you want to replenish it. Like, you know, I've got some really great quality brushes that I've had for 15 years, and they still look the same as they did when I bought them, because I take care of them and because they're just good quality to begin with. Like this guy, I've had it for 10 years. It's good quality to begin with. It's a MAC brush, and it's maintained its quality. When you get something that's a little bit lower end, you may replace it more often, possibly. You might not. You might get a really great one and it just sticks around for good. But look for brush fallout, read reviews and that sort of thing. If you don't know where to start, Coastal Scents has some good brushes. They're not super glam quality. If you want great quality brushes, I like MAC brushes, I like Sigma brushes. Both of those are excellent quality. They're natural hair. Coastal Scents is synthetic. It's fully synthetic, but it's good quality synthetic. So those are great brushes too. And there's a ton of stuff out there. Just Google it. But I wanted you to know exactly what these brushes did. I hope that I addressed that. And I've been talking straight for like half an hour, so I'm gonna get off here now. But I appreciate you guys. Thank you for listening. I hope this was good information for you. Y'all have a good day.